Santa, I talked to the old swamper, and he told me he'd like me to tell this story about Oscar. Now, Oscar was our legendary gator. He lived to be, I don't know, 89 years old. Nobody knows for sure. But the old swamper told me that when he started to work at the swamp park in 1959 as a boat guide, that Oscar was a big old gator then. So there's no just telling how old Oscar was. You go down to the swamp park, Okefenokee Swamp Park, you can see Oscar's skeleton time you go into the gift shop. But I'm going to read y'all a story about Oscar and how Oscar saved Christmas for the swamp children back in 1932. And it goes kind of like this. Oh, it was a cold night in South Georgia. It was down almost freezing. And that's cold in South Georgia. In the Okefenokee Swamp, we'd been having a fire. And anyway, it was a cold night. In 1932, as Santa got close to the Okefenokee Swamp, he started to smell smoke. And he said, good gracious alive, who in the world lit up their pipe or cigar? And then he happened to look, and he saw smoke coming from all over the swamp. And he and his reindeer were just, boy, they were covered in thick black smoke. And Rudolph searched and searched for a landing place. He says, Rudolph, we can't keep flying in this stuff. We liable to run into an airplane. So, or a big buzzard. You never know. So, poor Rudolph finally spotted a little grassy field. And they went down for a landing. And this happened to be on the biggest island in the swamp, called the Cowhouse Island. So, just as they got down low, we had been having drought, and Santa had been reading about it, but he didn't know that the swamp was on fire till they got there that night. And the swamp had been, in a drought siege for several years. And just as they got down there, he went to hollering to Rudolph. Said, pull up, Rudolph, pull up. This ain't Cowhouse Island. And Rudolph and the other 8 reindeer pulled up and began flying just above the treetops. Boy, they was hanging moss on their hooves and knocked one owl nest out of a tree. And the old hoot owl was just sprawling because 2 of her eggs broke. Shortly, Santa spotted a dim light through the smoke. Cautiously, he and his team approached the vicinity of the light, and Santa recognized the home of Mr. and Ms. Cruz. Now, he remembered the Cruzes as living on the north end of Cowhouse Island. Now, the north end is right there where the swamp park is today. If you ever go to Okefenokee Swamp Park, Santa landed right back of there in their field. They had a big field, the Cruzes did. No, anyway, as Rudolph led the others and Santa down for a landing, they began breaking limbs, dragging cypress tops, and then they started into the red bays and the loblolly, longleaf pine. Boy, back then there was still a lot of longleaf pine. And Santa was always loved to see a big longleaf pine. He always thought, or I did, I always thought it was the prettiest pine there is. The Cruz family awoke. All ran outside to see what the ruckus was. Boy, I tell you, when they crash land, it made a noise. Tore down a fence or two, like to hit the well. And Mr. Cruz shouted, what's going on? He came up to Santa in a sleigh, and he Santa says, "Why, I'm Santa Claus." And old Mr. Cruz said, "Why, you look like Blackbeard the pirate." He said, "Your beard's blacker than mine." And Santa laughed too, realizing, after he realized that he and his reindeer and his sleigh was all covered in thick black smut. And Santa's red and white suit was black. He said he looked like he had on an undertaker's frock coat. Worst of all, Rudolph's nose was not glowing bright red, because it was smut black too. "Oh, woe is me," said Santa. "How in the world am I going to deliver toys to the children who live in and around the Okefenokee without Rudolph's bright nose to guide me?" "Now, don't fret, Santa." Mr. Cruz says, "I'll get a bucket of water from the well, and with a bar of Miss Cruz's homemade soap, we'll have his nose shining bright in no time at all." And Santa, I said, "Mr. Cruz, after a little while of flying in this stuff again, his nose will be black again. We won't make it 2 miles hardly." And Mr. Cruz said, "Well, I just don't know what we're going to do." I told him, I said, if we take off in this stuff, we may have a worse crash. So while I was sitting and worrying about the situation, young Kyler Cruz, he was always a bright boy. He said, "Oh, don't worry, Santa." He said, "I've just thought about how you can make your swamp deliveries." He says, "Yeah, I've got it all figured out how we can take all these toys to the rest of the children around the swamp." And I told him, I said, "Well, son, Kyler," I said, "tell me." He said, "Well, here's what we'll have to do." Kyler gets all excited. He was the type that when he started to get a bright idea, he just went all to pieces. So he says, "Oscar can pull your sleigh." "Oscar? Who in the world is Oscar?" Kyler says, "Why, Oscar is the biggest alligator you have ever seen in your life." And said he's a sweet boy, and said he knows every trail in the swamp. And Santa says, or I did, I said, "What about him? Can he fly?" He said, "No, Santa, you never heard of an alligator that can fly." He said, "But he'll pull your sleigh." That he knows every trail in the swamp by heart. So he said several times, when I tired of pulling my boat, I made a rope harness and throwed it over Oscar's head, and he pulled me wherever I wanted to go in the swamp. He said, "Oscar is just a sweet boy. You've never seen an alligator like old Oscar." Well, Kyler just made me think, boy, this Oscar might be some kind of marvelous alligator. I said, "Well, where is Oscar?" He said, "He's in a lake about a mile away." Kyler says, "Santa, you just wait here. I'll call him." He said, "Call him if he's a mile away?" He said, "Yeah, but Santa, you don't understand. Sound carries in the swamp." He said, "People been hollering back and to at one another for 200 years in this old Okefenokee." So he started calling, "Oscar, Oscar, come here, boy." And in a little while, Rudolph and the other reindeer began to snort. And I said, "Oh my goodness, something's scaring them." And they smelled Oscar coming. Oh, here come Oscar. My goodness, when he come up on that island, right there in the Cruz's front yard, it almost scared me. I'd never seen an alligator that big. But Mr. Cruz and Santa, who was me, Mr. Cruz helped me unhitch the reindeer. And we went to the mule lot. Oh boy, Rudolph and Dancer and Prancer and the others, they were just sitting there shaking. Boy, if they'd have had their bells on, they'd have rung the bells off for their harness. Mr. Cruz says after they settle down a bit, I'll throw them a few bundles of fodder from the crib, and they'll be all right. All of a sudden, Oscar came walking right on up into the yard. My goodness, what an alligator. Some said he was close to 14 foot long. But I don't know if he was that long or not, but boy, he was a whopping alligator. And I told Mr. Cruz, I said, I have never in my life seen such an alligator. That's the way, that was Oscar when he started coming in the yard. That's the way he looked. Only he was a lot more gigantic than that. Good gracious, he was a whopper. I said, that gator got to be nearly 14 feet long. And after we got to assessing the situation, I said, now this reindeer harness ain't going to fit that gator. What are we going to do about that? And I said, it'd be too small anyway. And Kyler said, we'll use our mule Liddy's harness. Said we can adapt it to him. So Kyler went to the barn and brung out the mule harness, and Kyler and me was harnessing Oscar. I got to thinking about, this drought's dried up some of the trails, and there ain't no water for him to swim in. What we gonna do then? Kyler said, Santa, I know you don't know much about alligators, but an alligator can walk just as good on land as he can swim in the water. Said, matter of fact, an alligator can about run as fast as you. Said, we've lost people in the swamp, and we think the gator can run faster than some people. So Kyler says, Santa, let's go then. They got him harnessed up. So Oscar starts all kind of slow. He's not used to a harness like that. But he's in that big old sleigh full of toys, or what was left. And so they started off. Santa and Kyler. Kyler rode in the sleigh to help him, tell him who the children were and the homes that they were visiting. Kyler is up front with the reins while Santa is nestled comfortably in the back. The Cruzes say goodbye to them as they disappear in the smoke-filled vastness of Okefenokee. And boy, we went for a sleigh ride that night. Of all the hundreds of years I've been going around the world delivering toys, in my sleigh, and it's older than I am, I have never been on a sleigh ride like that. Now, as we got back, Miss Cruz's brother came over and he had a big camera. So he took a picture of me and Kyler and Oscar and the sleigh in the swamp, right out there in the edge of Cowhouse Island. And you can see it's just about dried up. I don't know what I'd have done without little Kyler Cruz. But it was getting on just about daylight. And we woke the Cruzes up. They had done gone to bed waiting on us. But we woke them up. And one of the children said, all I could hear was, ho, 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 from you and Kyler. And we pulled up in the front yard, and boy, Oscar, he couldn't even wag his tail. He was wore to a frazzle. That was one more tired alligator. And after we unhitched him, Kyler took him and out to the edge of the water and helped him get in the water. And old Oscar just ambled on off back into the swamp. In the meantime, Mr. Cruz was helping me hitch up the reindeer. And I told Mr. Cruz, I said, this has been one unforgettable night. I don't think I've ever had a night that I'll remember. I had a porpoise try to help me one time, but he kept slipping out in the harness. He was so wet. But Oscar did splendidly. Kyler told the folks that we stopped at every place on the swamp. We even stopped at Little Joseph in Boggy Bay and said, I don't know why, Santa, but we still got toys in the sleigh. And I said, well, I don't know how we got a surplus of toys. I had it all lined out that everybody was going to get some. And one of the little crew's children said, Santa, what about us? And I said, oh my goodness. And all this havoc and all, I said, I even forgot about y'all. So we distributed the last of the toys. And of course I had to blush a little bit. It was embarrassing. Santa ain't as young as he used to be. And I forget a little bit. So he reached in his bag, or I did, and got down to one or two little toys left and gave them to the babies. And then I looked at Kyler and I said, Kyler, son, how in the world can I reward you or reward Oscar? He said, he's the one who saved Christmas for you swamp folks. I said, I need to do something for Oscar. And Kyler says, oh, Santa, don't worry about Oscar. Tomorrow I'll take him a big plate of Mama's clabber biscuits. Said, boy, he loves clabber biscuits. Said, she'll bake him some in the morning. Said, I'll take him about a dozen of them big clabber biscuits and put some of that homemade butter on them. Said, that'll be all Oscar will care about. So I said, well, that's fine. So I'm about to get off. It's starting to get to be the crack of dawn. And so taking the reins in my hand, I said, up, Rudolph, Dasher, Dancer, Prancer, Vixen, Comet, Cupid, Donner, and Blitzen. And boy, all 9 reindeer kind of perked up. And I hollered, let's go, and we took to the air. And we were leaving just at dawn's early light. And finally, just as we were leaving the Okefenokee swamp, I shouted, ho, 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 and a Merry Okefenokee Christmas to all of you young'uns. We gone till next year. Bye-bye. And that's how Oscar saved Christmas for the swamp young'uns. Well, Oscar was a sweet gator.
I'm the mayor of Whoville, and I want to know who stole our Christmas presents that were over here. Do you know who stole them? Who stole those Christmas presents? Who is that?
The Grinch.
The Grinch took them. Santa, the Grinch.
I've had trouble with that Grinch. I'll tell you what.
What are we going to do about it?
I'll tell you what I'd do to him. If Oscar was alive, I'd throw him to Oscar, but I doubt Oscar'd eat him. He didn't like bitter stuff.
No, he didn't. Thank you, Santa.
You're welcome. And everybody get ready, because I got to get back to the North Pole and help all the little elves load up. And I got to eat my bowl of vegetable soup. And Miss Claus has got a good gracious. Miss Claus has got me a big sweet tater pie. And I might eat that whole thing before I leave Friday night. But anyway, there ain't nothing like Christmas in the Okefenokee swamp, especially in the days of Oscar.